Good afternoon. Welcome to our latest episode of Norfolk Community Forum. This is where we round up everything that's going on in town, highlight some specific department functions, and also note some points of interest that are coming up in the future. My name is Kevin Calcutt. I am the chair of the Norfolk Select Board, and I am joined by our town administrator, Blythe Robinson. Hey, Blythe, how are you?
Good, Kevin. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks. So we just wrapped up our latest select board meeting last night. We had a couple of things we wanted to note for the community today, starting with some Halloween guidance.
So thank you, Kevin. I think we've got Halloween coming up on the 31st as usual, and wanted to remind people that Halloween is not a community organized event. It's a fun event for kids and families. And so our advice to everybody is to make some plans for a safe Halloween, and whatever those are, we hope that you are able to do that. We have put some safety tips on our website on the homepage, and we suggest that residents take a look at those and plan a safe event, whether it's still going trick-or-treating, but in a slightly different way, or some type of a family event. But from the town's perspective, we're not making any determinations about whether Halloween is canceled or not. So go forth and enjoy and be safe.
Thanks, Blythe. And we'll throw the graphic up that highlights those safety measures that can be taken up onto the screen here. And it's also worth noting, too, that up until this point, Norfolk as a whole has done a fantastic job in adhering to many of the safety guidelines that have been put forth. So I don't think anybody has any concern that going through a holiday like this, that we're going to maintain the same level of responsibility. So thank you for the efforts up until this point, and we look forward to a safe holiday.
Yes.
The next item we have is an upcoming presidential election, kind of a big deal.
Very big deal, and we're thrilled that voters have been very active so far. When I checked in with the town clerk late last week, they'd gotten about 3,000 mail-in ballots, and at least a third of them had already been returned, so that's awesome. So just want to take a moment to remind everybody about the options that they have, which are also outlined on our website on the town clerk's page. People can continue to return those mail-in ballots. You can either drop them in the brightly colored box right at the entrance to town hall from the parking lot, right outside our door. You can bring them to the town clerk's office, and right now they are located on the ground floor of our building, right across from the library. Early voting has already started, and it's available every day through October 30th. And those hours are also posted on our website, and that includes Saturdays and Sundays. And then, of course, if you're a fan of doing it the old-fashioned way, as we say, voting on the day on November 3rd will happen at Freeman Kennedy School with all of the social distancing protocols in place for COVID. We had a very successful primary on September 1st, and we're ready to go again with voting on that day. So that's a bit option for people too. So get out and vote, whether it's for the questions on the ballot, president, representatives. There's a number of things to take care of by November 3rd.
Thanks, Blythe. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't call out the efforts of our town clerk, Carol Green, and our assistant town clerk, Anthony Turry, in being able to put together these incredibly efficient and safe live voting events. The communication with the community has been amazing. I think that everything up to this point, given the circumstances, has just been above and beyond what they've been able to deliver for the community. So thank you to them both.
Yep, they're doing a great job.
Next up, we do have some volunteer opportunities that are coming up in town. A couple of them are related to associate roles. We do have a Zoning Board of Appeals associate role, as well as a Planning Board associate role. Now, what an associate role essentially means is that the commitment is fairly lighter. It's great for people who are looking to get a taste of the policies and procedures related to these committees and the scopes of what they review. You are able to contribute to the conversation. You are able to participate in all of the meetings. But, I think one of the upsides of it all is that you don't have the huge commitment of a 3 or 5 year term typically associated with some of these seats. For those who are looking to get involved in some of the short and long-term planning of the town as a whole, the planning board is a great place to do that. Or for those who would like to learn more about the application of our zoning bylaws in specific instances, and also the management of 40B comprehensive permits, the ZBA is a great place to be able to do that as well. In addition, we do have an open seat on our Council on Aging for those who are looking to get involved in the senior functions here in town and how we manage those as a municipality. Blythe, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's a great overview, Kevin. Actually, I would say people can get a hold of us in our office and send us an email, give us a call. We're going to be putting up the volunteer application on our website with the details of what you just mentioned, so people can access it right from the site and get back to us, and then we can look to appoint them in an upcoming meeting.
Fantastic. Thanks, Blythe. And then the last item for what's happening is we've had a couple of experimental events over on Town Hill over the last few weekends. We were approached by a brewery owner in Medfield, a small brewery called Zealous. The owner, Jeff, came to us and identified that he had executed some very safe and efficient pop-up beer garden events in surrounding towns and had some interest in partnering with Norfolk to be able to have them over on Town Hill. Now, this is very new for our community. I don't think that we've done anything quite like this before, so it did require a bit of discussion and picking through some of the details. But after the first 3 events, I would have to say they've been a pretty great success. I've had the opportunity to attend each one. I've had the opportunity to speak to residents who attended them, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. I think that, mixed with where we are right now with a lot of the restrictions and parameters in place with COVID, being able to have something like this where the community can get together outside in a safe environment where everything is appropriately distanced and handled from a food and beverage management perspective, I think that it was just a great contribution to the community and something that was greatly appreciated by just about everybody there. And speaking with Jeff, it's also been very successful from their perspective. I think that over 250 people have come to each of the weekends. So it's been showing some great volume, maybe a little bit less than the last one due to the holiday weekend. But we're looking forward to a couple more events before we get into the real cold and start evaluating if this is something that we want to pursue in the future, whether that be into the holiday season for those brave enough to execute this during the winter or as we look into next spring. There have been some notes that have been brought up about things that we could improve on. Some of them are related to the use of recycling receptacles around the events. Some of them were related to the timing of the events with the darkness creeping up earlier and earlier. And I think we've been extremely responsive, and as has Jeff and his team, to be able to execute on those recommendations. So as we start to get more feedback, we start to get more input from the community, we'll speak to the parties who are involved, and we'll continue just to evolve it into something that is fantastic for the community as a whole. Blythe, anything else from your perspective on our beer garden pop-up event?
No, I think you've covered it well. I would just encourage people, if you have some thoughts about it, feel free to reach out to us so that we can evaluate accordingly and plan great events in the future if that's what the community would like.
Absolutely, thanks. Speaking of beer and food, it's a great segue into our next segment in which we like to bring in one of our department experts to talk about something related to a specific function at Town Hall. And who better to do that than our motivational rock at Town Hall, Mr. Todd Lindmark, our Finance Director. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the opportunity.
So we opened it up to the community this time around as we wanted to get some feedback and some questions from those around town as they relate to municipal finance, giving those the opportunity to have a direct line into our finance guru to answer whatever questions are out there related to our town, our budget, our forecasting, et cetera. So we have some questions here, Todd, and if you're ready to go, we'll kind of do a little bit of a lightning round with you.
I'm certainly ready.
Awesome. So the first one we have is the town passed its budget for the fiscal year late in June. How are we doing to that budget based on where we were projecting we would be at this time?
Yeah, we're doing pretty good so far to date. Obviously, the budget process is quite a lengthy process. And this past year, we started it back in December, went all the way up through May in anticipation of trying to get it approved through May, but it wasn't until June 27th at the annual town meeting. Part of that budgeting process required us to really reevaluate the entire budget, not only reevaluate the entire budget, but also look at the revenues because we were facing the pandemic with COVID-19 coming up. And part of that process was to say, okay, some of the revenues we have to reduce and really kind of hone in on our overall budget. Part of those revenues included the state revenues, which were related to Chapter 70 monies and unrestricted government aid. Some good news there is that the state has identified and wanted to level fund those numbers from the previous year. So while we anticipated reductions of 5 to 15% on some of those items within the state budget process, they're actually going to make them level funded. So the impact to us is a positive about $180,000. And of that $180,000, we're looking at about another $85,000 kind of going back to the schools as we talked about in anticipation of getting monies back from the state and how we would handle those. So at the upcoming town meeting, which I'll talk about in a little bit, we're looking at giving back the schools about $85,000 to help out their budget process. Some of the other items as it relates to the actual overall budget includes COVID-related items that we require for purchasing of protective equipment, sanitation, all the different items, telecommuting, special services for the schools, things of that sort. So today I have to keep track of those. And again, the state identified us to be able to get about $1 million and change that would be allocated to the town of Norfolk to be utilized for those programs. To date, we've used about $630,000, leaving us a balance of about $425 after all the submissions are in. So again, we're on good track. We're being cognizant of making sure that, we're not flying off the handle on any of the spending requirements, but making sure that the schools are open, cleaned, town hall, library, senior center, DPW, all the different facilities, police and fire are all managed and being protected in this hard times. Some of the budgeting items, overall, our revenues currently about 27% on track for the quarter ending 9/30, which typically you would have about 25% of your revenues. So we're outpacing a little bit on the revenues, and we're just shy of 25% on expenditures. But that's all expenditures in, and a lot of times we have some pre-funded expenditures, which would include software expenses, some items related to healthcare. We have retirement payments that are typically paid in July to take advantages of some discounts. So that trend for the expenditures going forward will go down a little bit. Again, we had to pre-fund quite a bit. So we're doing pretty good overall as a comparison.
That's great.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. And for those who are looking for any spreadsheets or outlines of any of the information that Todd just covered, he did present an amazing actual versus projected outline for us at our last select board meeting. So that is available in the select board meeting packet, which you can find on the select board page on the town website.
Great. And I would just clarify that it's for last night's meeting, October 20th. So Todd, thank you for that. So we're going to be spending a little bit of money on some things at the special town meeting coming up in mid-November. Can you tell residents generally what we're going to be doing at that meeting?
Yeah, again, it's not a very heavy lift for the meeting this time around. A few different warrant articles on a few different subjects. We don't have any unpaid bills, so we'll probably fly through that article real quick, very easy. The other items are typically transfers, and sometimes at the fall town meeting, we'll do transfers in anticipation of some various department expenses that weren't anticipated when we came out with the budget initially. And then in the May town meeting, we might do some additional true ups again to the department budgets, again, based on unanticipated expenditures throughout the year, whatever those may be. In this case, we have a few different items that we've identified. While we've identified them to be transfers, again, as I've related regarding the additional revenues that we're getting from the state, as well as our regional dispatch center, we're typically had to make a payment of about $95,000 for the quarterly payment for the regional dispatch center. They've refunded those amounts to us because we have a grant that's going to be covering the expenses for the dispatch center for this year going forward. So that additional $95,000, along with the state funds that we have available for the town portion side, kind of contribute to the total of about $275,000 that we'll be utilizing for the transfers. And one of the transfers I already talked about was the money's going back to the schools, just shy of $85,000, and that'll help out the Norfolk Public Schools. And then we have 4 or 5 items related on the town side, stormwater management that we have to be in compliance with on an annual basis, town council expenses. We've had some additional litigation, some additional hearings, OPEB funding. We're looking to put some more monies into the OPEB and putting monies back into IT, our information technology department as well, to help get a position back at a part-time basis. And then while we anticipate that we have some additional IT expenses related about $10,000 for getting some documents scanned in due to the pandemic and being able to be more efficient in our operations, we may have to cover that cost as well if they're not going to be covered through COVID CARES monies. But that's kind of overall the big picture of where we are with the transfers. And then in addition, I don't know if you want me to keep going.
Well, I just wanted to react and clarify for everyone that we're not spending any new money, if you will, at this town meeting. It's only with revenues that we had a budget a little less on. So we're actually going to stay at a lower level, less money than we have available with these transfers. We're trying to be very conservative this fall. So if you could just give us a very high level overview of what capital expenses we are going to have, about what we're spending, that would be great. We typically do articles for capital spending in the fall meeting. So please touch on those.
Sure. The articles at the fall town meeting, again, typically on the capital side, that's usually when we get the free cash, which I'll talk about in a little bit, certified. And then we can ultimately use some of that free cash towards the purchasing of capital items. And also, we also look at possibly utilizing debt in order to help us with some capital items. This year, we anticipate about $100,000 coming off because we're making payments on a storage tank. So that allows us some flexibility within the budget to do some additional debt funding. And with money rates being where they are, it's not going to be impactful on the budget for this upcoming year. So we're pretty much just swapping out those amounts for a bunch of different items related to DPW, including a couple of trucks and some road work. And then we have about $400,000 of our free cash once that gets certified. That'll be used for various departments, both police and fire, police for some cruisers, police and fire for some radios. School has to have some work done on some various pumps, library, painting, and then some voting equipment based on town clerk and with the census where we're at and what we anticipate of possible another precinct. So those are the items that have been identified to be utilized with the free cash versus the borrowing.
I'm glad you mentioned free cash. I think the next logical question for you then is, can you just remind everybody what the term free cash means? Because I'm not sure it's widely understood.
Sure. Free cash in the municipal world, which when I first came on here about 4.5 years ago, basically when I was told if it makes sense, it's probably illegal. So I use that rationale on trying to figure out things, especially when it comes to items of this. Free cash, if you're in the corporate world, is related to retained earnings. So after all is said and done, go through the process, close out the books. We have a number of items that are revenue generated. Then we have all the expenses. If there's a differential, that differential, positive differential, becomes free cash. That free cash goes through a process with the DLS. They do their microscope examination to make sure that everything's on the up and up. Ask about 5,000 questions just to make sure that everything that you're reporting is where it's supposed to be. And then shortly thereafter, they'll send a certification indicating that you X dollars available to use. And these dollars are one-time revenues, which you're not going to be really anticipating year over year. Free cash can fluctuate from year to year depending on how the year turns out. Like I said, with expenses, if the expenses increase to the point where you're at a negative, that's going to impact your free cash negatively. So you might not have as much free cash this year as you do the previous years. We anticipate this year's free cash number to be approximately right in line with what last year's was. And with the budgets that were distributed based on the town meeting of last year, they came in and had some good turnbacks, which means they didn't spend as much as they were really allowed to. So that kind of helps out with our free cash situation. We have to be cognizant on a going forward basis. Like we said, when we do all this reviews, I work with Blythe, I work with the advisory board, work with the select board, and talking about, what do we really ultimately, what's the best interest of Norfolk here as it relates to not only the budgets, all the different department heads, all of their requests, the capital improvement program that we have in place, taking into consideration all of those factors, kind of come up with a strategy and a plan and say, okay, well, based on all that and what our free cash is, we can identify these items that are within the capital improvement program to be funded. And then we roll some of those monies in for the Springtown meeting in anticipation of maybe possibly covering additional items related to snow removal. If the snow is really bad, expectations, because I have no idea where this pandemic is going to take us and what that's going to look like for 2022. But, we're just trying to be a little bit conservative and make sure that we do the right thing for the town of Norfolk as a whole.
Thank you.
So Todd, while it is fantastic news that we are in a better place than perhaps we had projected for when we initially did the budget for this fiscal year, one of the things that we noted during the planning process was the last time we experienced an economic downturn of this volume, the real impact came in the following fiscal year. So based on that, do you have a sense of what next year's budget will look like at this point?
Not 100%. Again, I anticipate budget departments to come in line with where we're at now. No significant increases there. I don't foresee any big spike in expenses. We're currently discussions with the maintenance department regarding electricity and getting those rates lowered, locked in so that we can budget a little bit better. So that's, again, more positive news. So the expenses will be going down. But again, with respect to the COVID and where we are, we have a little over $400,000 remaining available through us right now through December 30th. If that gets extended, that might help us out for expenses that relate in the springtime. But for 2022, no idea as far as where the state's going to come in. Again, when we first started the budget process for 2021, it was doom and gloom and take about 30% or 40% off the top and figure everything else out, which would have devastated everybody. But utilizing a bunch of different towns, reaching out, having discussions with other finance directors and coming to conclusions based on where people have been historically, it was not as bad as we had anticipated. And again, we took a much more conservative approach, and we will continue to do that going forward. And as the December, January timeframe approaches, I'll have better information at that time for anticipation of what the 2022 budget will look like. Again, I don't see a huge outlier to say we should change dramatically. Property taxes have been coming in on time. We'll find out in February with excise taxes how those will play out. but all the other revenue items are lining up where they need to be. Again, I think one of the items that was identified was the meals tax, but again, the meals tax, we did not receive September amount as of yet. So I don't think we're that far off from where we anticipate. So I think it's all pretty good. But again, we're going to take a very conservative approach.
Absolutely. Thanks, Todd. And then one last question for you we had here was, what should residents know about the 5-year property reevaluation that is just about complete?
Yeah, so every 5 years, the Division of Local Services, Department of Revenue Division for municipalities requires the assessing department to go through a process and do a full revaluation. And the revaluation is basically all the properties in town have to be brought up to fair market value so that everybody's paying a fair and equitable portion on a going forward basis. And they require this 5-year rotation of all municipalities because it is a very big endeavor. And it requires, again, getting to every property, doing the assessment and bringing it up to the current marketplace. So of late, you probably had somebody knock on your door, leave a little door knocker letting you know, hey, we need to do an assessment. If you can let the assessors in, they're very friendly people. They're very safe. They wear the masks. There's no touching, no worries about COVID related items like that. And I can understand some people's trepidation with respect to that. But again, the idea here is for us to be able to provide fair and equitable across the board, the entire town, because what we don't want to do is have a lot of abatement applications coming in because people feel that their value might be too high. And if they think their value is too low, they're probably not coming in anyways. The idea here is to make sure that everybody's fairly assessed across the board so that we all contribute, again, equitably towards the town of Norfolk. And if they have any questions, they can always reach out to the assessing department. And again, be happy to help out whatever the questions are with respect to this. The property visit itself is very limited. It's a walkthrough of the house just to identify, to make sure that the items that they have on their property card match up with what the current property has.
Thank you, Todd. Greatly appreciate that. Blythe, anything else for Todd from your perspective?
No, I think it's a great overview. Thank you, Todd.
Sure, absolutely.
And Todd, I will say that in my short time of being involved here in town, it's become abundantly clear that the intricacies associated to municipal finance definitely do not tie directly to that of private finance. So I do appreciate all the time that you've spent in getting me up to speed and more often than not correcting me when I say incorrect things in a public forum. But for those who are looking for more information related to the town finances, you're more than able to reach out to Todd, to Blythe, or if you're looking for a much more pedestrian outline, to the select board as well. Mm-hmm. So once again, thank you very much, Todd, for everything that you and your team do, and we appreciate you being on.
Thank you, Kevin. It's always been a pleasure. I always look forward to learning more because municipal finance, again, it's not the easiest thing to understand. And trying to have the information and the ability to discuss and have that conversation with individuals who do have questions so that you can enlighten them to help them better understand. Like we just discussed free cash. I mean, not a lot of people understand the free cash and what that process is. Where there's debt, there's all different kinds of different areas of intricacies as it relates to finance and municipal that I'd be more than happy to discuss one-on-one or what have you.
Awesome. Thanks so much again, Todd.
Thank you.
So now we come to the segment of our program where we outline some of the hot button items coming up, things of interest for the community as a whole. The first one we'd like to talk about is with the holiday coming up for Halloween. We wanted to note 2 things that are happening. The first being the Norfolk Lions drive-through Halloween car crawl. I know that one of the many negative impacts of COVID has been the inability for us to safely execute the insanely popular haunted train ride event that happens every year with the Lions over at the Holmes property. But this year, in the spirit of being creative, the Norfolk Lions partnered with the Freeman Kennedy School to be able to execute a car crawl, where this would be done along the drive going into Freeman Kennedy. If you would like to participate, it is being held on Saturday the 24th, and that'll be at Freeman Kennedy. That'll start at 5 p.m. You will need a ticket, but tickets are available for purchase online on the Norfolk Lions website, and we'll put it up on the bottom of the screen here for anybody that's looking to get in last minute. The other event going on is the CPAC Trunk and Treat over at HOD. That is going to be on Wednesday the 28th. This is also being done in a safe and guideline following format. So anybody who is interested in participating in the Trunk or Treat event at HOD, you can RSVP to the website address that we're going to put along the bottom here. With that, Blythe, did you want to note any other upcoming items for the town?
Yes, several things. First of all, as we mentioned earlier in the program, we've got the fall special town meeting coming up on November 17th. That's a Tuesday night. This year, it's going to be at the King Philip High School in Rentham. The reason for that is that in order to have it indoors, which is probably a better idea for mid-November, the cafeteria at the high school is the place that we can most safely socially distance the number of people that we expect to come. There are just 8 articles on the warrant. It's a nice short one this year, but still it's important business. And so trying to plan safely, that is the intent. But if for some reason we find there's a need to change it because we're gonna have an even larger turnout than that space can handle safely, we will use the website, social media, various ways to let everybody know. We will be mailing out the warrant as we usually do. So keep an eye out to your mailbox for those. Another item coming up, something a little different we don't do very often, is we're having a foreclosure auction. Unfortunately, communities from time to time do acquire property through the foreclosure process, and Norfolk's no different. I think we've had one a few years back, but we're ready to have one again, and it's going to be on Tuesday, November 10th. It's going to be held outdoors on Town Hill in the gazebo, and there are 15 properties that are available for sale. Information about that is on our website on the homepage, and it's also on the Treasurer Collectors page. And what I would point out is that this year we have a property which is a single family home for sale, as well as 4 or 5 properties that we've identified are actually buildable lots. We've taken some extra steps to determine that they meet zoning and are perk for the purposes of the septic field that the properties would need. So encouraging buyers who are looking for the ability to build in Norfolk, those are great opportunities. So please look into that and call the treasurer's office if you have any specific questions, and attend that auction. And then with winter coming, I don't know if our residents know, but we're not able to completely cover all the plow routes in town with a number of staff that we have in public works. Most communities can't. Most communities like us hire drivers to either drive our trucks or companies that can provide truck and driver. And we're looking for both. Information about that is available on the DPW page on the website. And we've got some signs up around town looking for people. So if you are interested in that type of work, we would love to hear from you so that we can make sure that when the first snow flies, we're able to plow to our residents' expectation. So those are things I want to cover for you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Blythe. And I think the last thing that I'd like to note is just the select board's upcoming meeting schedule. Our next meeting will be on November 2nd. We do understand that is a Monday, but November 3rd has some other thing going on that apparently people want to pay attention to. Yeah, so that being election day, we're going to have our meeting on November 2nd so as not to overlap with people who are looking to participate and follow along with the results. Our next meeting after that will be on November 17th. And then moving past that, we haven't defined our date for December just yet, but typically we hover around the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of the month, but we'll probably nail down some December dates at our November 2nd meeting. So with that, that is everything that we had for this episode. Blythe, anything else you'd like to share?
Nope, I'm looking forward to people's questions if they have any to follow up on what we talked about today.
Absolutely. And just like we did last time, once we solidify an agenda for our next episode, we'll put it out there for the community. If anybody has any questions for Blythe or I or our department leader, we'll be able to put those out, and you can submit those to us and have them asked during the course of the show.
Hey, if anyone has a request for a particular department they'd like to learn more about, tell us about that too.
Absolutely. If there's somebody that you'd like to see put on the hot seat, feel free to let us know. So with that, thank you so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you again soon. We wish everybody a safe and healthy Halloween. And when you see a 6'4" Pokemon trainer chasing around a little Charmeleon around the neighborhood, please don't take a video that's inappropriate. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Bye.